at the heart, at the foundation of media, of press, the same heart and foundation of science, is one single idea. We must never stop asking questions. If we do, science is dead. If science believes it has the only truth, there will never be another Einstein. There will never be another breakthrough event. And if journalists stop asking the important questions, then there will never be the dream of the United States of America.
Rob Dew with Infowars.com. We are on location in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., right across the street from the National Press Club, where today Robert Kennedy Jr. and Robert De Niro had a joint press conference along with several others talking about a $100,000 bounty to give to any journalist or any member of the public who has a documented study that proves that mercury is safe to inject into small babies. And right here with me, one of the guys up on the stage was Dale Bigtree. He's the producer of VAXXED. You may have seen that documentary. There's a big promotion of VAXXED. I got to say, the way you guys promote, almost every day I see something new on my Twitter feed or Facebook feed of what you guys are doing. So tell us how you got involved in VAXXED and what brought you to the event today.
I mean, I was a producer on the daytime talk show The Doctors for 6 years, so I was celebrating the best that medicine has to offer, best doctors, surgeries, new technologies. And then I got an informant that told me about the whistleblower, Dr. William Thompson at the Centers for Disease Control. And he said in 2 weeks, this guy's going to come forward and say that vaccines are causing autism and the CDC's covered it up. I mean, obviously that's the biggest medical story in my lifetime.
You'd think it would be.
Yeah, you would think it would be. And you would think, a show like The Doctors would want to do it. But that's not the way TV works. I mean, you're not sort of shackled by the same things that we are in television. You don't have those pharmaceutical ads every commercial break. They're actually paying your salary and telling you what you can and cannot say. And so obviously I wasn't able to cover that story. And what was shocking was, 2 weeks later, the story did come out online. Social media went crazy. But not a single newspaper, not a single mainstream news organization covered the story of a top scientist at the CDC saying they were committing scientific fraud on vaccines, on vaccine safety studies. So that's when I really started to realize there's something bigger going on here. Our media somehow is entrenched with the pharmaceutical industry, and this is a government agency. The CDC is wound up in this. My curiosity got the best of me, and so I started investigating, where's this story coming from? That tracked me into Andy Wakefield, who's, the probably the most reviled doctor, I think, in maybe in the world.
They use the word discredited every time they say Andrew Wakefield, the discredited doctor. It's always discredited. And they never want to walk that back. But continue on your story, and then I want you to get to that about how he's really not discredited, how that itself is a lie.
Yeah, I mean, so we can go right there. I mean, obviously what I was saying, I told you is that in order to do this story, I mean, the whistleblower story, I wanted a piece of it. No one was touching it. But Andy Wakefield was the one with the recordings of Thompson on phone calls and had really been doing the work and had been working on this film for about a year when I ran into him. But I had investigated Andy Wakefield. I mean, here I was about to leave a really cushy job in television. I'm an Emmy Award-winning producer, and align myself with Andy Wakefield. It's a scary journey. But as you start investigating the Wakefield story, you realize even this has issues to it. Even this is cloaked in all sorts of, really baloney. I mean, there's no way to say it other than, what we hear is this fraudulent doctor put together fraudulent data and made this fraudulent study. Fraud was never ever proved by the GMC, which is the General Medical Council. It is true, Andy Wakefield lost his license, but it was for medical malpractice. Very different, and people want to punch it on a bumper sticker. You can't fit this story on a bumper sticker, but essentially it came down to two terms. Was it medical investigation, or was it clinical investigation or medical research? Those two terms is what he was basically on trial for with one other doctor, Professor John Walker Smith. Now remember, there were 13 scientists on this study, so it wasn't just one guy making up fake data and throwing it in front of a journal. I mean, he had to get 12 of the top scientists in the world to sign off on this study. But what the GMC was looking at was, if I'm, they had 12 kids in this study, and what they were looking at was if you're doing colonoscopies and spinal taps, fairly aggressive, investigative procedures, if it's clinical investigation, that means I'm doing those things on you to heal you, which means I don't need to go and get ethical approval. But if it's medical research, I'm doing these very, invasive investigative procedures for the good of the whole, but not for you. If that's the case, then I have to get ethical approval. What it came down to is the GMC said you didn't get ethical approval, and we believe that what you were doing was medical research, not clinical investigation. Well, and that was it. So they lost, a malpractice suit. Like, you should have gotten ethical approval, you didn't. So think about it. I mean, that's sort of like saying, two police officers ran into a house. They heard screaming, gunshots, went in. Someone's lying on the floor. There's a weapon laying there. They find a guy hiding in the bushes out back, and fingerprints on the gun, blood, all of it. This guy's the murderer, except in court they say, you know what, you need a search warrant. And because you didn't have a search warrant, we're letting this guy go free. Well, that doesn't mean the guy didn't kill the person. In this case, the MMR vaccine didn't get exonerated. There was no fraudulent data. All they said was the way you collected your data, you should have been getting ethical approval. But just a year and a half ago, the other scientist, Professor John Walker Smith, appealed the case in a real courtroom, and that judge, after looking at the entire case, gave him back his license and said that the General Medical Council handled this proceedings in a terrible way, and basically rebukes them in an 80-page write-up in giving Professor John Walker Smith back his license, saying that John Walker Smith clearly treated these children for years beyond this study. Therefore, it was clinical investigation. They did not need ethical approval, and therefore there was no medical misconduct. That's the true story.
And I would venture to guess that the judge was not on the payroll of Big Pharma, which we see a lot of these, like you were saying. How bad was it when you were in the TV industry, certain subjects, because you were in a medical field, were there certain other drugs that you weren't allowed to talk about, or was it only the positive stuff? You weren't allowed to showcase anything that might shine a bad light on Big Pharma? I mean,
you know who your sponsors are. It's not like someone, there would be stories that just say, look, let's not go there. It's too controversial. But I won't say that we couldn't push the envelope, but you really didn't attack drugs. You sort of generally say maybe we could do a story about prescribing too many statins or something like that. But you didn't ever name Merck or Pfizer or Sanofi-Aventis or, in this case, the CDC. I mean, the real problem with this was the CDC were friends of the show. They would invite us in every time there's a flu outbreak. We could go right into the CDC headquarters and see them all buzzing around.
See the map.
That's right. I mean, so that was something that, we didn't want to let go of on that show. And look, I'm not putting the show down. The show is what it is. It's a pharmaceutically funded show. But what I didn't realize is that all of television is pharmaceutically funded. I think that was the real wake-up call. I mean, it made sense, we're doing a medical show, but I didn't realize that CNN, like every single, news host we have, every anchor, Bill O'Reilly, Rachel Maddow, Anderson Cooper, doesn't matter. That ad right after they've said whatever they're going to say, that ad for a pharmaceutical drug that has some ridiculous ticker tape of side effects, and you're sitting there giggling in your living room thinking, who the hell buys that? Well, we got to stop giggling, because that's who's paying Bill O'Reilly, Anderson Cooper, Sanjay Gupta. You are never going to get a story that really goes against the pharmaceutical industry, because they're paying everybody's salary, and that's the way it goes. And what I was saying today when we were at the National Press Club, which was with Bobby Kennedy, I'm calling out journalists. I mean, are we going to let go of journalism? Are we going to say that we are owned by industry? Because mainstream media likes to say we're trying to make sure that our government hasn't been purchased by lobbies, and they act like they're really these watchdogs. But the case is that the fourth estate, that's how we refer to journalism. It's the fourth branch of government. Thomas Jefferson said, if you don't have a free press, you will not have freedom. You will lose your democracy. And so if we look at television now, and it's owned by the pharmaceutical industry, and so they own journalists, and are going to tell journalists what they can and cannot report on, then we've lost the fourth estate. In a way, we've lost a branch of government that has been totally captured by industry. And I'm calling to journalists. I mean, luckily you work in a great place where as far as I know, you're not being told what you can and cannot report. And we're not supposed to be told what we can and cannot report. That's free press. If we lose free press, we're done. And I think that's the biggest story here. I mean, VAXXED has had an amazing journey. It continues to spread and go everywhere. I mean, you said you see, posts every day. That's the people. We're not doing that. I'm not funding that. People are moved. There's a movement around this film that's getting it out there.
Well, and that's like a Streisand effect. People aren't allowed to talk about this, aren't allowed to show it, so it only ends up on these weird social media platforms that they never thought would be to spread stuff like Vax. It was thought to, we're going to get the corporate message out here to more people on their phones, and now people are going, whoa, they're waking up through their phones and seeing we're turning the probe droids against them. These are really Imperial probe droids. I have 2 of them on me right now, and probably recording everything I say and watching my habits and all that. But they couldn't account for that element of people wanting to know the truth. I think that's where we're at. People want to know the truth.
I mean, you have to imagine trying to figure out how to control the internet right now. I mean, I think fake news. I mean, this whole fake news, I mean, that's propaganda too. And if you imagine now that the news has become propaganda, which it is, it's owned. You're not getting free press. You're not getting the free, true story just as we discovered it. You're being manipulated by whoever's paying for it. That's what those ads are, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars paying for whatever you're seeing as news. So what do they do when people stop tuning in, start going to social media, start looking at other places for their news, getting more refreshing information that actually sounds true, feels true, has some sort of instinct to it, like, hey, that sounds like more of what would be the true story. Well, now the mainstream news media is saying that's fake news. You know what the fake news is? It is the mainstream. It's store-bought, purchased news, bought by the highest bidder. In this case, usually the biggest lobbies in this country. Right now, the #1 lobby in Washington, the pharmaceutical industry, outspending oil and gas 2-to-1. So I say to people, what does a guy like me do? I'm a producer. I work in a medical talk show. I find a story about a whistleblower that's clearly pointing out that our vaccines are destroying the lives of children and they're hiding it from the American public. How am I going to get that story to you? I can't do it on the news. So I went and made a movie. And then what happens when you make a movie, you're thinking, well, now we can get into festivals, people hear the story, and then you get into Tribeca Film Festival and they kick you out because the sponsors don't want you there. What is the sponsor? I mean, when they were kicking us out, I don't care what they say. We spent an hour on the phone saying, you're going to destroy Tribeca Film Festival. I mean, this is free speech we're talking about. Why would this festival do something like this? It's just one documentary. Even if it's controversial, what is the issue with this? And they finally said the Sloan Foundation has been one of our primary sponsors since we started this thing. I mean, think about that. There was a documentary that essentially said that the President of the United States bombed the World Trade Center. I mean, that thing played in almost every film festival in the world, every theater. Nobody had an issue with it. But we've been kicked out of Tribeca Film Festival, kicked out of Houston World Fest. We've been banned from major movie houses. We just opened up in Australia. Bomb threats in Australia to the point where the only way you can get a ticket now to see the film is a grassroots group sells you the ticket online, and then they tell you 1 hour before you're going to go screen the movie where you're going to see it.
Wow.
Kicked out of UK. We were supposed to play in the UK Parliament. I mean, I've never heard of a film like this. I mean, I don't know if I'm bragging or I don't know if I'm just telling the truth, but I think this is the most censored film and probably the most, controversial documentary certainly that I've ever seen. I don't ever remember things getting kicked out of theaters. We just say, hey, it's free speech. You're allowed to say what you want.
You are literally the most dangerous film producer or documentary producer I think out there right now.
I mean, it very well could be the case. I mean, that's not what I'm trying to be. I'm just trying to get people the truth. This is, and I haven't stopped there. You do a movie like that. I mean, when you work in television, you work on a story for maybe, a week or two, and then you got your 30 minutes and you crank it out. This is the first time I've taken a story and investigated it for 1.5 years and put the film together. Now that I've been traveling the country with that film, I've met thousands of parents with autistic children, all of them signing our bus. We have over 6,000 signatures of parents with vaccine-injured children. This is real. This isn't 1 in a million. If it's 1 in a million, I've already met everybody in America, and I assure you, I haven't traveled that far yet. And then you continue to investigate. Where's the safety of vaccines? We could go on for days. I know that you guys talk about this a lot, but the corruption is at every single turn. All I got to say is, people are starting to wake up to the fact that the pharmaceutical industry cannot be trusted. They're out for money. They'll up an EpiPen. They'll jack an EpiPen through the roof. We just saw this a couple of weeks ago. And then they sit in front of the Congress. Congress get pissed off. We have kids that could be, having an anaphylactic, deadly allergy in their classroom, and you're making it hard to get to an EpiPen, and you were making money off of it to begin with. What are you doing? And what do they say? Oh, you've made a mistake. We're not here for patients. We're not here for the citizens of this country. We're here for our stockholders. I mean, people say this is a conspiracy theory. No, it's not. The pharmaceutical industry is being perfectly honest with you. They're telling you, we don't care about you. I mean, you look at Merck. I mean, they put out a product, VAXXED, killed 50,000 people. In a courtroom, we discovered that they knew it caused heart attacks before they ever put it on the market. They get slapped on the wrist with a $4 billion, settlement. But when you're looking inside that case, you see internal emails where they say about doctors that question VAXXED, we will seek them out and destroy them where they live.
Right.
And what do we see with vaccines? Every time a doctor speaks out about the dangers, just happened at the Cleveland Clinic, 2 weeks ago. Doctor says, you know what, flu shot's bad for you, it's got mercury in it, don't take it if you're a pregnant woman. Every medical institution is attacking that guy. They're telling Cleveland Clinic to fire that guy, seek them out and destroy them where they live. That company, Merck, that thinks like that murdered over 50,000 people in this country, they make most of your childhood vaccines. And so I ask people, can you give me a little bit of skepticism that a company that's paid out billions of dollars for lying and murdering people, that maybe they don't have your children's best interests in mind? That maybe, just maybe, there's some corruption involved when we're talking about a vaccine program now that's worth billions and billions of dollars. When we think about this lobby, outspending oil and gas 2 to 1, I say to people, what do you think they're doing there? Do you think they're there lobbying for your child's safety, for your health? They're there to make money. And the way they're going to make money is forced vaccination laws they're writing with the politicians they're buying every day. We have got to wake up, America. This is freedom hanging in the balance. I think about people that fight, gun rights or, land rights, water rights. This is your body. This is the body of your child, and you're handing it over to a state government that's going to say, we're going to inject you with whatever we want, whenever we want, however we want. I mean, just look at your history books. Remember, what country ever did well when they gave the government that much power over their being? I think we're in really, really deep trouble here, and that's what I'm traveling the country trying to talk about. And luckily today, I had an amazing opportunity to stand with Bobby Kennedy Jr., who's fought to keep mercury out of our environment, out of our food, out of our water, out of fish. Now he's discovered it's in vaccines, and it shouldn't be there. There's no need to have it there. So I said I would gladly stand with you on any stage where you're going to discuss that. We're at the National Press Club. Robert De Niro joined us to tell us about his autistic child and his experience watching his child regress after a vaccine. And then Nico LaHood, District Attorney of San Antonio, same story. These are clear-thinking, bright people we've trusted with our lives. We've watched them our whole lives saying, this is not a joke, this is not a lie. These vaccines are dangerous, and all we want, no one's anti-vaccine here, nobody's trying to stop a vaccine program, all we want are safer vaccines. I mean, that's it, do better. They will tell you, hey, the Supreme Court says vaccines are just unavoidably unsafe. There's nothing we can do about it. And then they'll tell you, science is settled. How is the science settled if we're still destroying a single child? Don't we say, do better? Isn't this the greatest nation on earth? Aren't our scientists supposed to be the best there are? I mean, we have cars driving themselves down the streets now without a driver. And you're telling me you've given up on trying to figure out how to make vaccines that don't injure a single kid, or some sort of testing program so that we know that you're going to have an allergic reaction? Oh no, we're just going to pay out $3.8 billion in damages. $billion in damages with a B. That's how much we've paid out since we have covered the liability. Government now, there's no liability on pharmaceutical industry. Taxpayers pay for it. And now, since we've passed a law like that, taking liability away from the pharmaceutical industry, we've paid out I think it's $3.3 billion right now. So nobody can tell me vaccines are safe, because you don't pay out damages because something's safe. And you don't take away liability from the pharmaceutical industry because something's safe.
And what's crazy, the $3.3 billion you're talking about is only the people that can go through the vaccine court, which is literally trying to push a giant boulder up a hill to get those damages, because you have to prove that it caused the direct cause of your kid's malady. You also have to prove You also can't go back and use evidence from other cases that they have. So you're on your own. You're literally in a box with hyenas, and they don't even pharmaceutical companies don't even have to show up. I don't think a lot of people realize that the vaccine court is not just, oh, my kid's injured, I get the doctor to write a note and I get a payout. It doesn't work like that. No. And then you're also dealing with how much does it cost to raise a kid who used to be fully functioning and who's now autistic. I think if you talk to some of these parents, they'll say it costs a lot more money than what the government's giving them.
These court cases are lasting 7 or 8 years for parents that can afford to stay in it. Their lawyers almost never get paid, so finding a lawyer that even wants to defend you in these cases is almost impossible. 7 or 8 years to determine that this vaccine destroyed my child's life. How much money have you shelled out at that point in learning disability classes and trying to change your diet or work on anything to help them out? And think about this. Do you know there's a vaccine court that's set up to protect the pharmaceutical industry, a pseudo court, no judge, no jury, can't invite any press in there, and as you said, no precedents. You can't call on anything that's happened in any other case. You were all on your own. Do you know who you're suing when you go into that vaccine court? Are you aware?
I think you're suing the federal government.
Even more specifically, you're suing Health and Human Services. HHS is the defendant. HHS is the mothership of CDC, FDA, National Institute of Health. HHS is who is doing our safety vaccines tests that they're going to use against you in a court. Their job in that court is to prove that you're lying. And what they're going to do it is use their own science. This is like having a murder investigation where the person doing all the forensics is the murderer themselves. I mean, the conflict of interest is outrageous. They are literally fighting, proving you're lying, and you're supposed to come up with science that proves otherwise, that my child was injured. And the only science available to you that they will accept is their own. Come on, folks. We have a problem here. Whoever designed this system, it works really good for this gigantic pharmaceutical empire, but it's terrible for people, it's terrible for children, and all we're saying is we have got to fix this. We have got to have totally independent safety testing that is not controlled by this vaccine court system or protecting anybody's ass. We've got to have, just like the National Transportation Safety Board, if a plane crashes, you don't let Boeing investigate it. You bring in private individuals to investigate that crash. A vaccine injures someone, and you bring in the vaccine companies to go ahead and investigate it. We got to stop that. These are the types of things that I think Bobby Kennedy's calling focus to, Robert De Niro, Nico LaHood today, Tony Muhammad was there. I mean, all we're doing is saying this system is messed up. It's really, really corrupted. And our children are at stake. I mean, our health in this nation of children is terrible. I mean, here's the stats. More children die on the first day of life in the United States of America than every other industrialized nation combined.
It's pathetic.
I mean, it's crazy. 1 in 2 kids has a chronic illness. 1 in 4 children is leaving elementary school on a drug they're going to be on the rest of their lives. And we've all seen it. Autism's at 1 in 45, up from 1 in 10,000 in the 70s and 80s when I was a kid. So 1 in 45. We've got kids with asthma, 2 or 3 of them in every classroom now. 2 or 3 kids with a deadly food allergy, multiple sclerosis, all sorts of autoimmune issues, covered in eczema. Kids are just suffering. Their skin's practically falling off of them. That is not the classroom I grew up in. Something's wrong, and we would say it on the Doctor's Television Show, a medical talk show. This is the belief. They say this is the first generation of children that will not live to be as old as their parents. And people want to tell me this vaccine program's working? I think we got to stop down. We should be looking at pesticides, we should be looking at vaccines, we should be looking at our air, our water, all of it, because something's wrong. Our kids are not as healthy as we were.
Right. So where do you go from here? What is the next step? You've finished Vax, you're taking it on tours. What's your next project? I
mean, right now I've sort of let go. People say, what's your next movie? I say we don't have time. The Institute of Health, the Health and Human Services, who I just pointed out is defending themselves in these cases, if you go to their website, they have Healthy People 2020. This initiative was designed to not only force vaccinate children like we have in California now, but force vaccinate adults. It's coming our way. Every adult is about to be forced into a vaccine program because, think about it, they're not a lobby in New York. I mean, they're not a lobby in D.C. to make money off of 1.5% of unvaccinated kids. They want 320 million forced customers, and that's why they're buying politicians. That's what's happening here. I recognize it. A lot of people recognize it. I know you've reported on this. I mean, we have got to stop this. So there's no time for another movie. I don't have time to spend the next 3 to 5 years making a movie if by 2020 we could all be being injected with poisons and toxins that we have no control over. So
one of the vaccines they got is for people who don't like government authority.
I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. That vaccine's got my name on it. They'll call it like the big tree vaccine. But I mean, look it. I mean, right now I'm traveling state to state. I'm doing rallies. I'm talking to legislators. I'm rallying people together. A lot of things that they're doing is people that have really enjoyed the movie or built, grassroots networks, and they'll bring me into town to get everybody drawn to the state capitol to go and talk to politicians and stop laws that are forcing these vaccines on citizens. So I find myself in a unique place where, right now I'm letting sort of television and documentary go, and I'm enjoying just going out and trying to warn people that we're in trouble and talk to politicians, and it's going really well.
Well, Matt, I appreciate you giving us the time,
Awesome.
And best of luck to you in the future and everything, and hopefully we wake up more people, because we really don't have a choice at this point. If we're not going to wake people up, if we're not going to get out there and do the right thing, then we can't bitch about it later when it's all come crumbling down upon us, and we're living in a state where everybody's diseased and hurt and never better and can never reach their full potential. Those types of people are easily controlled. So that is what a government entity likes. The government entity likes an easily controlled population. So of course they're going to appreciate a vaccine program that vaccinates everybody. That's something that they want. So you have to stand up for yourself. You have to stand up for your rights. You have to stand up for your children's rights. Get yourself medically exempted if you think you need to do that. Read the inserts in these vaccines and do your own research. Don't just take my word for it. Don't take Dell's word for it. Go out there, do your own research, look at what other people put together, because people are literally giving up careers, lucrative careers, to stop, to stop what's going on. This epidemic of poisoning our children. And it starts with the children. And once they have the children, the next generation is going to be easier and easier and easier. And then everybody's going to have 16 shots right when they come out of the womb, because they're going to get sick if they don't. So think about that after you watch this interview here and get to work. What are you doing in your community? Don't just stand there. Don't just sit on the couch. Get up and do something. This has been Rob Dew reporting for Infowars.com.
I want more candy. I want more video games. Lie.
And it's that type of behavior that spurred me to do the research to develop a true nutraceutical formula that was designed to smooth out and help children focus. All of our children are hit with modern mind control. Television, music, fast food, GMOs, sugars, you name it. Young humans have not yet developed their nervous system and are being hammered daily by globalist concoctions. It's no wonder they can't focus and calm down, and then are put on dangerous psychotropic drugs. Working with my team, we set out to find the best formula with the highest quality ingredients that children would actually like and take. We worked with the leading manufacturer in nutritional supplements that are safe for children to bring you the most affordable and powerful calming formula out there. Introducing Child Ease with herbs and calming extracts like chamomile and lemon balm and essential nutrients that taste great. Obtain your Child Ease today at InfoWarsLife.com. That's Child Ease exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com.